Can you go back to the I forget which slide it is, but the slide that had the immunosynapse and it had human versus mouse. Yeah, there it is, 18, I think.
Yeah, so this is the ASC. We had a human specific and a mouse specific.
It's interesting, isn't it, to look at the especially where the mouse inflammatory cells are in this model, huh?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting how much of a mouse component there was. At
So
least
it's
we
pretty
thought
much
that was pretty interesting.
there still.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, it suggests there's a certain amount of crosstalk between the mouse and human cytokines. We have these SGM3 mice because the human cytokines are necessary for this myeloid reconstitution. Um, but we have this probably human driven inflammatory milieu, and it's recruiting mouse cells as well.
So at the end of the day, um, well, I have a big picture question, and maybe it's not for you, Jimmy, but for anybody who knows. Is there a difference in engraftment based on the age that you try to engraft these guys? Um, I guess I would have a hypothesis that trying to being able to do it very early might improve things, be more tolerant of the engraftment, and it'd be more, I don't know, you'd adapt the mouse would adapt to it better. I don't know. It's just a question I throw out there, and if anybody knows anything about it.
That's a great question. I don't know too much about it. I think these were between 6 and 8 weeks when they received the engraftment. Um,
Kind of stems from
You know,
I guess I have. Go ahead.
is my memory serving me, Sandy, that um, with previous immunodeficient mice trying to get human cells in, there was a lot of work done with basically doing newborns and injecting via the facial vein or directly into the liver because they got better engraftment. And it's just because we now have mice that are so immunodeficient that people have moved away from that.
Hmm. But in theory, the immunologists tell us that a newborn mouse is still immune naive, right? Their T cells haven't been educated yet, and so
And they don't have NK cells until a couple of weeks of age.
yeah. Anyway, interesting to think about. Big picture, Jimmy, what do you think about this whole humanizing the immune system in these mice? Are there
um,
experiments where it really does work, or are people fooling themselves?
um, my takeaway, I think, is it's hard to recommend this NSG-SGM3 mouse. It seems to have a very high penetrance, this phenotype of HLH mass-like syndrome. And similar sort of findings are described in NSG, but at least in our experience, are usually at a later time point. So you have a few more months if you wanted to get your experiments done.
Well, it's hard
But
for me
yeah,
to imagine an experiment where this level of humanization of the immune system is actually going to be important to the study. And I just think about people who I don't know are trying to do the next level, like maybe they add a tumor or something, and they want to see the human immune response to the tumor, and they think this is the way to do it. Not so convinced that it's
yeah, that was the goal here, and the thought, I think, I don't know if it was from literature, advertisements, or word of mouth, was that you can get faster T cell reconstitution than NSG-SGM3. So they thought they could shorten the time frame and get the tumor in sooner into these mice, but it ended up backfiring. And yeah, I think the challenge is always getting a more complete or a more complete reconstitution rather than just whichever portions happen to reconstitute in the mouse. I think that's kind of the goal and the appeal of the NSG-SGM3, but I'm not sure it works in practice.
James, this is Jerry Chu. We've done similar studies using NOG-EXL mice. Would you happen to know anything about similarities or differences between that and NSG-SGM3?
No, but I was wanting to try those because I believe they have a lower circulating cytokine level than the NSG-SGM3.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not aware. There are a lot of decisions that have been made upstream. We've been involved in characterization, humanization studies. I've been only peripherally involved, but that seems to be the model that people have used. And the humanization occurs at four weeks.
Wow.
And again, this isn't. I'm speaking indirectly, but some of the aims have been very similar, but some of the phenotypes have also been similar in terms of weight loss and anemia. And the pathologists who studied this didn't call it macrophage activation syndrome, but definitely characterizing the population of both human, the human macrophage lineages, the erythrophagia, are things that I seem to recall from that study as well. So there definitely seems to be issues with model development, but in terms of head-to-head comparisons as to what might be the best model for various lineages, that's part of the goals.
Jerry, will you send me that mouse just so I have a record of which mouse you're talking about?
Yeah, sure. I'll send you some of the experimental details. Yep.
Gerald, this is separate. I think there might have been some anecdotal discussion happening that this also occurs in the mice in the strains you mentioned. I suspect there was we had, I think, another AGP round that I think somebody from, I suspect from Memorial Sloan Kettering, or I think somebody presented that they also noted those in that, but I don't think that's yet published. I suspect.
Okay.
And another thing which I would like to add is that probably Laura and a group from, I think, from Europe, recently published in VetPath two great papers. I don't know, maybe it would be nice to send out to the group. Those papers really captured. I think Laura is here in the discussion, so she can comment on that too. But one thing we noted is that also recently, at least in the industry, we had a study where the same issue happened, but those are the NPSP GW mice, basically the same thing, but they do not need irradiation. And it happened, so the study has to be terminated. So it was a combination of safety and efficacy study. The study has to be terminated, and we are still haggling with the client, indicating that this is a model-related issue and not that they have infection. So this issue is not known in the research community, including in pharma for that matter. So a lot of models have been used with safety and efficacy, and it's creating problems. And we are really have an issue in our hands now, dealing with how to deal with that even. So I think it's really great that you presented this, and I wish Laura could comment on that from their experience as well. That said, quickly, I have a question. Did you check the pancreas, and is there anything in the pancreas? I think in Laura's paper, she found very interesting thing. Maybe she can comment on that. Thank you.
Yeah, we did find human and mouse mast cell infiltrates in the pancreas with some atrophy. of the exocrine pancreas.
I see.
But yeah, that was definitely covered better in Laura's manuscript, or
Yes.
very well in Laura's manuscript.
So in your case, you have atrophy. Was there inflammation associated with that, or it's just simply atrophy?
Mast cell infiltrates,
Okay,
I would say.
okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Laura can comment on that.
This is Jerry Ray. I have
Oh.
a question. What was the patient-derived tumor that they injected in these animals? Since you had an earlier time frame of this developing, could that tumor have had some effect of stimulating something to change the milieu that this would come on earlier?
So we never got to the tumor. They never got to the tumor implantation, actually. So they planned to humanize first, to establish the T cell engraftment, and then engraft the tumors. Is that what you meant?
This is Laura. I can give a quick summary of sort of what was similar and different between, well, there's not much different between Jimmy's. So it's really remarkable how similar this.
Tell everybody that we'll sick Jerry Ward on that that Japan paper, and that people seem to be basing their judgment to use this model on. So Jerry, you have homework. Go ahead, Laura. I turn it over.
Okay. Okay, so it's really remarkable how similar these studies ended up between all the different labs who have been participating. We get the same time point. I think that ours was right around 16 weeks as well, where the mice started getting sick. Same tissue distribution, liver and spleen, same morphology. You were able to do some additional IHC, which really helped to show the activation phenotype, which is interesting. We too saw that really an activation of mouse F480 positive cells in the liver, which, yeah, that's an interesting finding. We also saw very little lymphocyte infiltration. It really varied between mice, but some had very little, and it was really an interesting contrast to the mouse models that are out there of HLH-MAS. So either, in my mind, either that means we are sort of modeling a different form of it than the standard mouse models out there, or it's not really, you know, it's maybe different than in humans, but I think it's the former, that we're creating a different type of model. We also speculated a lot on the GM-CSF. GM-CSF actually is, so it's human specific, as is the IL-3. The c-Kit cross-reacts with mouse, so that's one difference, but GM-CSF is really a likely target. You also mentioned that in your studies, about 30% of the mice that were engrafted or that were given the CD34 positive cells got this. We didn't have a perfect way to measure this, but approximately 30%. But that data was from Denise Amai and Rosalinda Doty at UC Davis and Jack's labs, which is, it's just so similar. And then a subset of those 30%, a smaller subset that got neurologic deficits and neurologic infiltrates. And then I think I'll finally say, as far as should we use this or should we not? So my major experience with this strain is because of investigators studying myeloid leukemia, and they still need to study this, and there's really no better model. And so they're continuing to, but you know, luckily we've communicated a lot. Those investigators were on the paper with us, and they know to submit all their mice to me so that they know that the endpoint points that they're following, you know, anemia, body weight, etc., is actually due to the leukemia and not this. And it is highly variable, you know, who gets it and who doesn't. Oh, one more thing I'd like to mention. We did do the Epstein-Barr-ish as well, and it was all negative. And I'll say in the beginning, I really, really hoped it was positive, because that would have given us a means to sort of pre-screen the human cells and get rid of any cases that were prone to this, and then that would help the investigators. But it just wasn't the case. I think that's all I wanted to add.
You're welcome to share screen if you have images that you want to share.
Well, I didn't have any images of these since we talked about going to histiocytic sarcoma, but the paper came out in the latest VetPath print journal, so others can look at that and sort of compare. And Sandy, I'll comment now. So Jerry Ward had suggested I present some histiocytic sarcoma just as sort of we're on this cell type and as a differential. He had said to do a quick presentation, but really I ended up with about a half hour or more worth of material. So if you wanted to talk about you had said you wanted to talk about something else at the end, perhaps we could put my part off till next month if you'd like, or I can fly through it here in 15 minutes.
Why don't you give us a teaser, but we'll put your full presentation on for next month.
Okay.
What Jerry was asking you to do, and then we'll spend the last 5 or 6 minutes getting organized on the course.